Gatos Town Council and the Finance Commission to order. Good evening, everyone. Clerk, can we have a large roll?
Commissioner Rogers?
Here.
Commissioner Rayner?
Here.
Commissioner Keown? Absent. Chair Fisher? Vice Chair Fisher?
Here.
Chair Monk?
Here.
Councilmember Ennie?
Here.
Councilmember Hudis?
Here.
Councilmember Adami?
Here.
Vice Mayor Risto?
Here.
Mayor Moore?
Here. Thank you. So we'll begin this meeting with verbal communication, which is the time for members of the public to address the Town Council and Finance Commission on items that are not on the agenda. I don't have any speaker cards at this time. Is anyone here to speak on verbal communications? Okay, because this is a special meeting, you know the rules. So please keep your comments to things that are pertinent to our agenda item this evening, which is item 1. Doesn't sound like it. 1 sec. You got it.
Okay. Verbal communications. Members of the public are welcome to address this Town and Finance Commission only on the matters listed on the agenda. I'm just reading this off. Town's resources may not be used, the audio and the video, which I wish we could do, because it does help when we look at things. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Okay, I'm trying to keep this short. This is a special, I saw this on Saturday. I don't know when you guys posted it. But it was, these are special meetings. This is the special meeting should be coming in and advertising. This one's for the Planning Commission. It should be publicized. There's only a couple people here, 1, 2, and then I want to put that up there because it's important. The bottom line is, it's a couple, 285 0.7 million to 300.2 million that we're talking about. And I think more, there's 33,000 people, roughly in the town. I think more people are concerned on how the town is looking at this. And I just want to know, like, the 10-day rule, if, why wasn't this posted? And is this like an emergency thing? Because I think it should be, even tonight's meeting should have been brought up in a normal schedule, because this is, again, this is a matter of town, finances, and I think more people are interested in it, especially with the way you're doing it. It seems a little sneaky to me. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no other cards for verbal communication.
Mayor, if you're interested, I can speak to the noticing requirements that apply.
Sure.
Whenever you're okay. So for special meetings, which this is tonight, the Brown Act requires 24 hours posted notice, and so the agenda was posted 24 hours in advance of this meeting. The 10-day publication requirement applies to land use decisions, and so the town does place ads in the newspaper whenever there'll be a land use decision coming before the Planning Commission or the Town Council.
Thank you for the clarification. With no other public comments, did you have a question?
No, I wanted to jump in before the presentations get started, though.
Okay, sure. Yeah, we'll move to item 1, which is to receive presentation on potential revenue options and provide feedback. And it sounds like Councilmember Hudis has a question.
Yeah, per our new agenda policy and our minutes policy, there would be only action minutes from this meeting. However, it's a study session, so by definition, no actions can get taken. So per our new policy, we have the option to request different kinds of records of this meeting. And, I think with all of the people who are here, the time that's being invested, the time that's invested in staff, I think it would be of benefit to the community to record the FAQs of this meeting, the questions that staff thinks are pertinent, and the answers to them. I understand we have a presentation, but there will also be important questions, I think, that come up. So I move to have FAQs for this meeting.
Councilmember Rennie?
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Yes, to the clerk.
I just wanted to clarify what you mean by FAQs, if there's any guidelines or anything, so that we know how to prepare them.
I'm not sure I want to wing it. I mean, we had the opportunity to do that in our policy that we adopted recently. In my mind, an FAQ is a question of general interest, so pertinent to the topic. So I think that staff could use discretion in identifying what are those questions, and not to have to do a verbatim, back and forth or anything, but to use judgment about what are sort of important questions that come up. And particularly since we have an expert here, I think it would be useful to have the answers to what I would call important questions. We adopted the term FAQ in the policy, but for me, it's important questions without going to the detail of either summary minutes or verbatim minutes or other things. I hope that helps.
Okay, so to clarify, it would be up to the discretion of staff to determine, and then those would be posted as supplemental to the minutes.
That would be my understanding. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? None? Okay, I will call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Okay, great. I will now turn us over to staff to begin the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Town Council Finance Commission. Christina Alfaro, Administrative Services Director, here to introduce the item this evening. Next to me, you'll see Wingsy Fox, and then online we also have Jim Morris with Urban Futures, Inc., or UFI, who will be taking you through the presentation this evening. Before we jump into that presentation, just wanted to take you through the agenda before you this evening. We're just trying to get our clicker to function here. There has been an update to the presentation, so you will see new copies before you this evening, and we will get the updated presentation posted after the meeting this evening. So here we go. The presentation outline for this evening is really to go over both revenue tax options and analysis, along with capital financing options as well, and then wrapping it up, taking you through potential next steps. With that, we wanted to give a bit of a lay of the land on town finances. The focus this evening, again, is to provide additional information for the Finance Commission and the Town Council on revenue options. The focus is still to preserve revenue options, not necessarily selecting revenue options for the November 2026 ballot. The charts that you see before you on this slide are ones that were presented as part of the mid-year financial report with the updated forecast numbers for 26-27. Additionally, the table to the right on unfunded needs was presented to both the Finance Commission and the Town Council earlier this calendar year, and those numbers have not changed since the last time we showed them. I did want to provide a little bit of perspective for the unfunded needs. These are based on Tier 3 capital improvement or CIP projects from 2004 that were escalated to 2005 numbers using a 4% escalator. I do want to reiterate, as I have in the past, there is no immediate financial crisis. The town is fiscally sound. We are simply bringing a different variety of options to the council and the commission because we do foresee in the future potentially having a structural deficit, and we want to get ahead of it before it gets too far down the road. With that, I will turn it over to Wingsy Fox, who will take you through the rest of the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council, as well as the commission. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening, and really do commend the town for looking in advance of potential revenue options. We were engaged to provide a little bit more detail of various revenue measure options, as well as get a sense of what type of tax rate might be needed to generate $5 million in revenue to fill a potential operating gap, as well as what it would look like potentially for financing $100 million worth of capital. This is just to have a number so that you can compare and contrast the different options. It's in no way saying that we recommend putting X, Y, or Z on the November ballot, or that $5 million is the right number for operating needs, or that $100 million is the right number for capital needs. It is to provide more information and to get some more feedback. I think it's skipped. It's going too fast. I was told that it wasn't going to work, and I had some stand-up jokes in my head, but it's actually moving too fast. Okay. The perfect background sound for this. So when we present revenue enhancement options for local governments, we do look at 4 factors, because how do you compare? These are different types of taxes, even if you're looking at generating one level of revenue. So there are 4 basic considerations that we consider. That is, 1, the adequacy and certainty of the revenue stream. So does the tax generate, say here again, we picked the $5 million. Are you able to generate the $5 million consistently? Or is it a volatile revenue stream year in and year out? We also consider equity and competitiveness. That is, how is the fiscal burden spread? Is it spread appropriately? Who bears the tax burden? And then how would you compare against surrounding communities with that adopted tax rate to generate the revenue stream? Is it transparent, easy to find information, structure is easy to understand? Is there a likelihood of voter approval? So we'll look at past voter approval on different revenue measures. And simplicity, is it simple enough to understand for the public, or does it cause confusion because there's potentially multiple ballot measures that need to be adopted, and that the tax is not highly burdensome? So there are a variety of revenue enhancement options available to local governments. We did not select for further evaluation at this time a couple of the taxes that you see on the bottom. For example, utility user tax. The voter approval rate in California is low and can be considered regressive. That's a tax on utilities within the town. The TOT, or transaction and occupancy tax, the town already has a 12% TOT, and so to generate enough revenue, again, we're looking at that $5 million target, would put the town well beyond any surrounding communities. There's also an option of vacancy tax that has been quite of a hot topic, but this is a type of tax that isn't as appropriate for generating a goal or target of a revenue stream. It really is meant to be for behavior modification, disincentivizing vacancy, rather than, again, generating revenue, consistent revenue for operations. For benefit assessment, I know the town is potentially interested in that. We do have a slide later on to talk a little bit more about what that is, and it is very specific to benefits with the properties within that district versus, again, creating a revenue stream for general operations. So we'll start with the TUT, or the transaction and use tax. This is functionally very similar to the state sales tax, and it is a tax on sale or use of goods that does exclude necessities of life, including most food and medicines. On the right, we have some data on the current total sales tax within the town. You have the 6% state sales tax, the 1.25% Bradley Burns local share, and then there's this 2% total cap for the region. Right now, the town does have Measure G, which is a 1/8 or 0.125% TUT that expires in 2038. Generally speaking, TUT voter approval is very strong, specifically for a general purpose TUT, which would require a majority vote. And you can also structure the TUT as a special purpose tax for specific uses and purposes that would require the 2/3 voter threshold. Do you want to point out that there is a special legislation within the county that adds a 1/8%. That's the Peninsula Quarter JPA Retail TUT. And very recently, in November 2025, the county adopted a temporary measure through 2031, which added a 0.625% for fiscal emergency. So the current total sales tax in the town is 9.875%, or 9 7/8%. And under the 2% cap, given all of the additional taxes that mentioned in the prior slide, the town has additional 1/8 or 0.125% left under the cap. That 0.125% would not generate a target of $5 million in revenue. That would be closer to the 1/2 cent or 0.50% TUT. And for that, the town would need to pursue special legislation, again, to get up to that 1/2 cent additional TUT. As you can see here, based on the town's already existing Measure G, we can estimate that that additional 1/2 cent tax would generate approximately $5.3 million annually, starting in the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2027. This would put the town at a 10.375% sales tax rate, at least until 2031, when the special measure, the temporary measure that the county adopted, goes away. We also provide some voter approval statistics here. Again, very strong voter approval for general purpose sales tax. This is within the region and the Bay Area. However, the 10.375% would put the town at the high end of the sales tax rate, as mentioned. So in summary, just some pros and cons on TUT. As I mentioned, voter approval is very strong, especially for general purpose sales tax. That 1/2 cent would generate this, again, $5 million target in revenue. And while it is more volatile, as you can see on the con side, than parcel tax or a UUT, we've been surprised even through COVID that sales tax remains strong. So again, there is the adequacy aspect of this sales tax. And in terms of spread of the tax burden, this does spread the tax across businesses, residents, and also visitors that come into the town. So tax burden isn't just on town residents. As I mentioned before, the flip side is that the town would be at the high end at that 10 3/8% sales tax rate. Town would need to pursue special legislation to go beyond that 1/8 cent cap that it's under. Having said that, having some differential in sales tax rates doesn't tend to drive consumer behavior that much. Before we move on to parcel tax?
Please.
I had some questions just on the sales tax, but just to be considerate, do we want to have them now or wait till the end?
I think that was a good time to ask a couple questions on the sales tax, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So a couple comments or questions I have when I looked at this is, what percentage of that sales tax stays local?
The transaction and use tax that the town already has, that measure G, that stays local. I'll go back to the structure of. So here's where the current rate is at that 9.875%. 6% is the state sales tax, and then there's the Bradley Burns, which has the allocation through the county pool. And then that 2% cap, you can see the various other agencies that have a TUT in place that benefit those districts or special districts. And then the 0.125%, again, the measure G is what comes back. If the town puts anywhere from, uses the 1/8 cap or seeks special legislation to get the extra half cent, that would come back to the town.
And then my second question was, have you looked at the town of Los Gatos and the breakdown for percentages that make up that sales tax revenue from a business standpoint, and just who makes up the majority of it and the potential impact?
I think we have had a visual of it before. I've seen a budget at a glance online that has it, but we are looking to include it as part of the budget as well as to see that breakdown for the town when you're talking about both property and sales tax, so we can see where the percentages are going.
And that would be helpful, and then maybe some economic sensitivity, if that can be included as well. Thanks.
The town manager.
Yeah, the last time we spoke with our consultants, 25 businesses made up 50% of our revenue.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Great. So with the parcel tax, this is a property tax. It is a special purpose tax that requires a 2/3 voter threshold. It is different from an ad valorem tax. Because it is a tax on the property, either a fixed or flat amount, or it can be based on square footage, tiered within that, or the same tax rate by square footage. Here you can see on the right-hand side some statewide facts about parcel tax. So really the restriction here is that the structure cannot be arbitrary. It's got to be done on a reasonable basis. And we're going to show you a few examples of how a parcel tax could be structured. Currently, there is no parcel tax in the town of Los Gatos. There are a few. We show some examples in San Mateo County as well as Santa Clara County. Santa Cruz County as well as the city also have some small parcel taxes in place. The voter threshold is fairly strong for parcel taxes. Our voter approval rate is fairly strong, even given the 2/3 voter threshold. So we're providing 3 alternatives here. And again, this is just for information so you can get a sense of what these different structures, what the tax rate would look like to produce that target $5 million in annual revenue. Here is the starting point that some other communities use, which is just a flat per parcel tax. So to generate approximately $5 million in estimated annual revenue, the per parcel tax would be $445 per parcel. And then below that, to incorporate some equity into the methodology, we looked at a tiered based on parcel size. So you can see 5 tiers here on that bottom table. The amount is based on the average parcel size here for the estimates to get to that $5 million target. But you can see here that the tax amount, instead of being $445 per parcel, no matter the land use or the size, the tax ranges from $250 to $3,000 annually. This is a tax that can have an inflator on it as well. We're just showing you first year what that would look like. And then as mentioned, can be structured as a tax rate per square foot. And so looking at the various parcel types or land uses as well as size, you can see a range here of what this tax would look like. It's not per parcel, right? So if you have a parcel whatever that size is how it would be calculated based on that 6 cents per square foot. Because of the distribution of parcels within the town, the unique characteristics, we did here introduce a cap. Otherwise, the very, very large parcels would skew. Those parcels would pay a really large share of the total parcel tax revenue. Again, this is just an example. We're not saying this is the right cap or that there needs to be a cap of if not desired, but we looked at a cap of $750 so that no parcel would get more than $750 bill for that year. And that would require about 2,500 parcels being capped at that $750. So to summarize, parcel tax, it is a very certain revenue stream, really not subject to market volatility. You can introduce an inflator as well. In terms of equity, you can see the different ways it can be structured to introduce more equity rather than just the flat per parcel structure. Voter approval, as I mentioned, is fairly strong, even given the 2/3 voter threshold. But it is a higher threshold than a general purpose TUT, for example. At the 6 cents per square foot with a cap of $750, the town would be towards the upper end of parcel tax amounts compared to surrounding communities that we showed on an earlier slide. Any questions on parcel tax?
Vice Mayor Risto, do you have a question on this?
Yeah, I did have a question, although you had something about exemptions. I know nonprofits don't pay, or some nonprofits don't pay property tax. Do they pay parcel taxes?
So the exemptions are, the agency can decide on the exemptions for parcel tax. It's different than an ad valorem, say a general obligation bond measure that we'll go over a little bit later. But there are examples of policies with certain exemptions. And I don't know, Jim, if you want to provide any more detail on that. But yeah, so this would be policy driven though.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, please, Councilmember Hudis.
On page 18, which is the more complex revenue alternative, the table there, it looks like other residential of 16,000 square feet would be 520 feet, 523. But single-family residential of the same size would be 750. Why is that, and what is other residential that might have that much lower rate?
College on slide 18.
Page 18 of the packet.
13 on the slides.
Oh, 13. Yeah, I don't know if Jim is able to speak as well because he's knee deep in the numbers. But yeah, we looked at the different types. There's condominiums, single-family residential, and other, which can be townhomes, mobile homes that we look at in other categories.
But, so in a townhome, the parcel size of a townhome, that doesn't make sense to me. I'm trying to understand what is other residential and why is it so much lower than single family?
Multifamily, if there's multifamily.
So it could be any number of units on a parcel, on one parcel?
Right.
Okay.
So the condominiums and mobile homes and the single family, then all other.
I see. So it could be 100 units on...
If it's one parcel.
Okay.
Again,
And I believe we do have Jim Morris maybe available to speak if he wants to add anything to this.
Go ahead, Jim.
and we can provide very specific detail. We have the spreadsheet. I just don't have it in front of me, but it would be,
Okay.
townhome, 2+ or multifamily.
Maybe we can have Jim come back to that when we figure out the technical difficulties. I think I saw a question from Councilmember Badami.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So how do ADUs figure in? Because you could have 2 dwelling units on one parcel.
Yeah, so it depends on which structure. If it's the structure is per square footage, it's the square footage of the acreage. There's also, you can look at square footage of the building improvements. It's another option. A little bit more difficult to get the data for that, easier to get a parcel acreage data. So here it's purely based on the parcel size.
Okay, so even if it's a fixed rate per parcel, and you've got 2 residences, dwelling units, it still would just be on a fixed flat rate, 445?
Yes, with that structure.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I saw Jim. Have we figured it out?
Can you hear me, Mayor?
Yes, we can.
Did you hear the question, Jim? They wanted more
Apologies.
detail on the other residential.
Yeah, so other residential is a mix. It's multifamily, and as Wingsy said, it can include mobile home parks. So you really get kind of a bit of a mashup, although we took mobile home parks and put it in with condominiums. So really what you're seeing is parcels that have multiple units on them, but it's one parcel. And so the metric here is simply parcel size. So I know one of the council members or one of the commissioners asked, what happens if you have multiple units? It's based upon the actual size of the parcel. So you could have multiple units on a fairly small parcel if they're stacked.
Thank you.
Don't know if that got at the question of the prior council member about other residential?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, Commissioner Monk.
Thanks. My question is about the cap. And to me, a cap like this feels regressive, which was noted in the prior slides about for us not pursuing one of the options. And I'm just curious if the cap is shifted, how much does it change the cost per square foot? And if it was removed entirely, what would the cost per square foot be?
Yes, we did look at those scenarios, and Jim can provide more detail. And again, this is just an example to show that we have a model that staff can use just to run different scenarios. And Jim, we ran it without the cap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it essentially cuts it in about half in terms of a rate. So you'd come in at about 3 cents without the cap. But then the range of that annual tax or assessment on each parcel widens significantly. And you can get a tax that some might pay up to, I think the height of it or the upper end was somewhere around $30,000. It might have been a little bit higher than that. So understandable that may be a concern in terms of the equity, in terms of a cap. But when we've looked at this with other communities, the counter argument goes, well, everybody who has an active or in-use parcel is receiving benefits from the city services that are provided to make that a functional parcel and to provide the services that the community needs to function. And does that scale at size of the parcel? There's an argument that it could. There's an argument that it couldn't. And so it's an alternative where that consideration has some equity to it. I'll give you an example where we see it the most is you might apply a cap just to single-family residential because you have quite large differentials between a small residential parcel and a large residential parcel. Both are a use of that, and they're the same type of use with theoretically somewhat the same burden, maybe not quite. But does it just scale one for one based upon the square footage of the parcel, even though you just have one dwelling unit on that parcel? You could make an argument that that carries a bit of an inequity to it. Equity is a lens that has a lot of different view sheds on it. So we just want to simply present it as an option that other towns and other cities have done, where they felt that that has enhanced that for the community.
Thank you. Other questions?
Can I make just one other point that I wanted to show on that graph? Because again, it'll give you some insight into how you can structure a parcel tax to make it feel like it best suits the needs, both in terms of revenue generation, but also the burden in terms of how that's spread. You'll see in that particular table there that there's agricultural and vacant land. And so you may want to establish a different rate for that, where there's no use made. And we put in there as an example, you could just establish a flat rate for those types based upon the size of that. Don't have to. You can scale those and let those just simply be on a per square foot basis. But again, you'll get some fairly large parcel taxes paid by folks with either vacant large lots or agricultural large lots.
Yeah, Commissioner Fisher.
So there's a number of ways that this can go, it seems. Does your firm help with narrowing down options for the council and for the town just to zero in so we don't necessarily anchor to these numbers in sales tax and these numbers in the parcel tax?
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
Go ahead, Wingsy. No, please.
So if the council or the commission wanted to further study a parcel tax, for example, we do think that an important piece is community input and information, and doing a survey to really understand each community is very different, and that lens with which you see equity. And then we certainly, again, have this model where we can run an infinite number of scenarios. This is what the rest of the per square footage tax rate would look like if you increase the cap, for example, to 1,000 or didn't have a cap. Jim, did you want to add?
Oh, yeah, simply that makes the point, right? Yes, we can customize this, and it really is an iterative process with either the community input or leadership input about what feels and it fits right for that particular community. We just wanted to give you an example that showed the various ways in which that could be done so that you can think about that, because it really does require your input so that we can help design that.
Great. And then I wanted to ask, you talked about, and I know we're not to that point yet, this would be a later conversation, but one of the pieces that is within this obviously is feasibility, and a 2/3 is a much higher barrier than a 50%, 50 plus 1, And I don't know if you did any looking at past elections in Los Gatos, but just for reference, the high school district in the last election, passed a 128 per parcel annual tax, and I think it passed by like less than 10 votes. And my assessment, and I'm curious if this is yours, is that school districts are more popular than cities and towns. And so I wanted to see, your reaction to that and sort of how you are thinking the town could or couldn't be different in a meaningful way.
Yes, and so I'll go back to slide 11. And absolutely correct. We do a lot of work with school districts on both general obligation side as well as parcel tax. The reason why school districts use parcel tax is for operations. For all other capital, they have a much lower voter threshold for general obligation bonds, which is an advantage as well. So we do tend to focus our statistics, and we'll also have some on general obligation bonds on non-school parcel taxes, but you can see here that since 2008, or 20 non-school parcel taxes. So there aren't as many that come to the ballot as, say, state sales, or TUT, the sales tax. But when you look at the ones that do come, specifically ones that give more detail about the special purpose, it's still a fairly strong voter approval rate. And again, we do think a key piece is a scientific survey, and so you can get very specific about structuring of the parcel tax, at what thresholds would it likely pass, and then your comfort, what margin of error are you comfortable in proceeding?
Thank you. All right, please proceed.
So in terms of, again, looking at that $5 million target for general fund operations, we were asked to look at a benefit assessment. And the reason why we separate this from our analysis that you just saw in parcel tax and TUT is because this is a different type of tool. Benefit assessment, also called a special assessment, it's not for funding current operations, current services, or current capital projects in your CIP that benefit the general community. This is for specific benefit to those properties within the special district. And so the process is very different. You do need to commission an engineer's report that gives detail regarding what are the benefits, what are the added benefits that are differentiated, these special benefits from a general benefit. And then even within that district, the proportionate share of each parcel's benefit, then they get a proportionate share of that tax. And the process is a mail ballot process. It's a protest vote. So you have to have a majority protest. And it is weighted by that proportionate share of the benefit that I mentioned before. Examples of benefit assessments are new fire prevention or mitigation services, new open space acquisition or restoration, stormwater system, again, specific to those properties within the district. Any questions in general about benefit assessment districts?
I did have one question on that, which was, I think the idea here is probably something like wildfire prevention is, I think, our thought on this. And one of the examples I think we've learned from and looked to is Truckee, which has a very sophisticated wildfire prevention program. And they ended up doing a parcel tax, but it was for a district within Truckee. It was for a special wildfire district. And so my question is, can we, and I this is imprecise, but can you make up the where you choose to go forward with this? What are the boundaries, the restrictions on boundaries?
Yes, so you would set the boundaries, similar to community facilities district, you would set the boundaries. You just have to have that evidence of that special benefit to those properties within that district.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
Great, so shifting a little bit in terms of looking at that $5 million operating target, the town separately has discussed capital needs or deferred capital needs. We did select, again, just looking at what options the town might have to generate, say, $100 million in proceeds. So we do understand that there's potentially more, potentially less. Again, just so that you can compare and contrast, we're looking at generating $100 million in project proceeds. So with the different revenue streams that we just discussed, like parcel tax or TUT, or one that we didn't look too much into depth, UUT, or you name, TOT, any revenue enhancement option that does come into the general fund, you cannot securitize that revenue stream to issue bonds. You could, however, issue lease revenue bonds, right? So you go to the voters for that revenue, but you don't need to go to voters to issue bonds against the general fund because you've gone to voters for the revenue stream, and you wouldn't be increasing any taxes with the issuance of lease revenue bonds. Separately, there is the option of general obligation bonds, and that does go to the ballot for towns and cities and counties. The voter threshold is 2/3. And this general obligation bonds can only be used for specific capital projects that is included in the tax rate statement, and again cannot be used for operations. So just looking at the lease revenue bond structure, And many communities, cities, agencies use this structure. The security for this type of bond is general fund available, legally available general fund revenues. And it is a lease-back structure where you would take town assets, lease it to a financing authority, for example, that would lease it back to the town, and then in turn the town makes lease payments that need to be appropriated every year. Those lease payments match debt service on lease revenue bonds. We believe the town's credit would be very, very strong. And so it's just making an assumption that the town would be in the AA category for a rating. And you could issue lease revenue bonds for 30 years. That would generate $100 million in project proceeds, resulting in a little over $6 million annually in debt service. Again, separately, you could go to the voters with a general obligation bond ballot measure. This is, unlike parcel tax, this is an ad valorem property tax, which some may view as less regressive because it is based on assessed value, not market value, but the assessed value, which is similar to how your property tax is calculated. Again, this requires a 2/3 voter threshold, and where this can be appropriate is where there's broad-based community support for the specific basket or list of projects that these bonds would be issued for. And what you would do is go to the voters with a maximum authorization amount, so that, say, 100 million was authorized. You could issue those bonds over time, multiple series, but you can never go above that 100 million. And then we try to structure it so that it's a level tax rate, again, depending on the assumptions. If you likely won't spend the full 100 million authorization in one series, you can issue them every year, every other year, again, with that goal of keeping the tax rate the same. So, Mayor, as you mentioned, school districts before. School districts pass these very regularly in general elections and have extremely high success rates. They also, as I mentioned, have the advantage of having a 55% voter threshold, unlike the town would have a 2/3 voter threshold. Having said that, we did look at the last elections, general elections going back to 2018, so you can see the success rate for non-school geo bond ballot measures, both in the Bay Area as well as statewide.
Are you done with this part, or are you still going?
On that one we just talked about. I was just curious in terms of data, if you have any information about if whether we're talking about a GO or even a parcel tax or sales tax, if it goes to ballot and it fails, and a second attempt is made, some point in the near future to try again, what's the success rate on a second try?
We don't have that particular data. I do know, though, that many school districts and towns and cities try again, and sometimes it's for the same purpose. Sometimes they'll survey, and it's for a more specific set of projects, for example, or services, or things change. There are very specific purposes and thresholds that should be surveyed. We do feel that taxes, geo bonds, parcel tax can pass anywhere. But it is a matter of how much and for what.
Commissioner Fisher.
For the difference between the revenue bond and the general obligation, is the debt servicing payment the same?
Meaning?
So your example with the lease bond is that on $100 million, your debt service is $6.1 million. Is that the same by issuing a general obligation bond, or is it cheaper?
So general obligation bonds have a stronger rating than lease revenue bonds. So if the town's issuer credit rating is a AA+, that's where your general obligation bonds would be rated. Because lease revenue bonds are an appropriation credit, again, the town council would need to appropriate those lease payments every year. It's rated one notch lower, so it would be a AA rated lease revenue bonds. Spreads between AA and AA+ range, right now we're in a market environment where the spreads are fairly tight, but yes, we would expect a general obligation bond to price better, and so it would be a little bit below that $6.1 million.
Go ahead.
This is information on the town's historical assessed value going back to 2017. So you can see the average growth rate of about 6.5% over the last 10 years. And right now the town is at 19.9 billion assessed value. So how we structure or give you estimates in terms of general obligation bonds is we take the total town's assessed value and we make some assumptions about what the tax rate would need to be in order to generate X amount of bond proceeds. Again, this is an example of, okay, we don't think you would spend the full 100 million to 300 million in one bond issuance. So our example has the town issuing every 2 years, just to give you a sense of what the tax rate would be. So for 100 million, in project proceeds across 3 bond issuances, the tax rate per 100,000 assessed value would be $18. Getting up to that 300 million would be $54 per 100,000 assessed value. We're assuming here a conservative 3% assessed value growth within this structuring, as well as 30-year bonds, as you saw in the lease revenue bonds. So the way that this tax is structured is per 100,000 AV. So just to give a sense, because some of us may not be able to do the math in our heads, and we looked at median assessed value within single-family residence in Los Gatos, which is over just over 1.5 million. So for example, you take that assessed value, divide it by 100,000 because this tax rate is per 100,000, and then multiply that by the 18 all the way up to $54 per 100,000 assessed value. And to the right would be that first year's levy for each of the tax rates, going from 282 to 847. Questions on general obligation bonds? Last slide here is just some information, again, on a timeline if council were to pursue a ballot measure. This is not a recommendation, just so you get a sense of what the schedule and process is for a ballot measure. Again, we recommend scientific surveys, opinion research, more study, talking to stakeholders. And in any given election year, really June is when you would want to decide on a revenue measure if you were to put one on the November ballot. And this is an ordinance process that would require the 2 meetings in July, if the council meets in July, because there is a deadline for submission of a ballot measure to the Registrar of Voters. For this year, it'd be August 7th, 2026, for the November 3rd election. That will take any questions.
Thank you very much. Yes, Councilmember Hudis.
Yeah, so the July 7, we actually, I don't believe, have a regular council meeting in July. So it would be June, I believe. Is that correct?
Right, you have to work backwards from the August 7th deadline.
Okay, so that would be like mid-June. And would this have to be considered at a regular meeting, or could this be done at a special meeting?
I can look it up, but my recollection is it's at a regular meeting, not a special meeting.
So that would be like June 16th or something like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Councilmember Badami.
Thank you. Follow-up question for staff. So although council doesn't meet in July, it's conceivable that we could still have a special meeting in July regardless, if necessary.
While you're asking other questions, I will look up whether it needs to be a regularly scheduled meeting rather than a special meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Let me suggest that I think we do it as we have a scheduled meeting in July that we've canceled. So it is, I would think that might be a regularly scheduled meeting, we just uncancel it.
Okay, thank you.
May I also mention, and I know alluded to it as the option, the lease revenue bonds versus general obligation bonds. There is an option for a parcel tax, for example, to be at a rate in which you could accomplish both the option of plugging your gap, whether that's the $5 million or less, as well as have a revenue stream, again, for those leased revenue bonds. Obviously, it would just be at a much higher parcel tax rate. Again, with the general obligation bonds, there is not that option. It has to go to capital projects.
Commissioner Fisher.
Do we have an estimate of the cost to bring like the sales tax or the parcel tax? What's it going to cost to bring that to the ballot? And then the follow-up is, if we need a legislative approval, is that already in the works, or is that something that we're still waiting on?
I can cover legislative. Actually, I think we have an Assistant Town Manager, Katie Nomura, who will handle the question on the legislative slide.
Thank you. Katie Nomura, Assistant Town Manager. We did receive direction from the council to pursue this legislation, so we are actively doing that now. It is in the works and in progress.
Just expectation on timing, and is there
so
an idea?
If I just to kind of anticipate what your line of questioning is leading us to, if there is a desire to go forward, then we would make it contingent on the legislation passing, but we would still put forward by the deadlines in August.
And then the cost.
The cost.
I don't currently have that information, something we can look into for you.
Based on last year, I think it would be around, I think we estimated, was it 80,000 to put the measure on, but we would need updated numbers, but that's where we were last year, and that's not including, costs for polling and other consulting services.
Please.
So I have had issues, I guess, trying to understand the timing on this in terms of the urgency associated with trying to get this on a ballot in November. And just to make sure I got it right, if we aren't on the ballot in November 26, we wait till 28, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. It just strikes me that one of the things that's missing is information to make our case if we were going to go to the voters associated with what the real clear need is for the whatever number you want to end up in. We're plugging numbers right now, but I don't think you could go forward with those numbers and make a clear case to the voters that that's a clear defined need. So I'm struggling a little bit why the rush. And I know last year we went through a pretty hairy budget conversation because we were projecting a deficit for this year, and that deficit is now a 4.3 surplus. So I think we bought ourselves a little bit of time that we can both really get our arms around what our current fiscal situation is, what the studies will yield in terms of what our future may look like. So maybe help me a little bit with why this kind of feeling of pressure that we need to get on this year's ballot.
We are not meaning to cause an emphasis on a rush to get this on the 2026 ballot. We simply wanted to bring information. So should the council decide that that is something they want to pursue in 2026, they understand the timeline to get there. In terms of the additional studies that we're waiting for, that additional information, I did meet with the consultants today. So we will be bringing the base forecast and the housing element numbers, back on April 14th. And that our plan is to be before council on the following meeting, which I believe is the 26th.
Yeah, so I actually really appreciate all the information. I've sure learned an awful lot that I had no idea about revenue generation in a town of our size. I think part of this is if you want to go forward with a successful campaign, having a very clear and defined need that voters can be communicated with and have input to, as you mentioned, but really believe that's a need. And I think one of our, maybe it's fortunate, in some regards it might be unfortunate, is we've been very successful at facing deficits and turning to surpluses at least since I've been on the council, which is great news, but I think it undermines a case that says we are about to go from a 4.3 surplus to a minus 3.1 next year deficit without a lot more information. So I think part of this is how would you really approach the public in a way that would be a successful campaign if in fact we can arrive at what our real need is.
Town manager, did you want to jump in, or Councilmember Rennie?
I might suggest that maybe some input from the Finance Commission members about which do you think is more important, trying to plug an operational hole that doesn't seem to quite be there yet, or to go after money to deal with some of our infrastructure needs, which is, I think, a different solution possibly. And I kind of feel like that's where we know we have a hole that's not going to easily get filled.
Please.
Continue with my opinions. I think that until we really understand what the effect of the change in the town is going to have, my gut says capital, to be honest. I think infrastructure has been not necessarily maintained in a way that's going to continue in our best interest in the future. But until we know more specifically, I think it's just hard to put a number on that yet. And I also think, as an example, in the operating side, we've got to build some credibility around what that really is going to look like in the future, and that we've taken the steps necessary to be as an efficient organization. I think the town's made great strides. I think a lot's happened this year, but I don't think we're done yet. So I think we got to finish that work, quantify that work, and then present that work to the town.
Okay, great. I'll go to Commissioner Fisher, and then I'll open up public comment, and then we can have more of a broad discussion about this.
Just a follow-up to that question on what it would, for the commission to be helpful for the capital and for the operating. I would think on the capital needs a breakdown, and maybe this has already been done, but with these, street roads, public safety, town facilities, a breakdown into urgency, maintenance, what is an immediate that needs to happen? Because if we have costs of 285 to 300 million, I got to believe that not all of that is in the near term, right? It's things that is we need to build towards. So I think that would be helpful. And then on the operations side, on the left side of that chart, we have a pretty good idea that those deficit numbers are probably underestimated. For a variety of reasons. And so until we kind of get clarity, it's hard to recommend or come back and say that we're going to have debt servicing of 6.1 million on top of maybe some of this unknown deficits. So we definitely want to get clarity, and we're working towards that. And I think, the hope is that we'll have that shortly.
Right, and for the benefit of the public, there's a study occurring right now that'll be done in the next month or so that will help answer that question. And then I'll just say one other thing before I go to Councilmember Rennie and then open up to the public. But I think it might be helpful for staff to consider bringing the wildfire presentation that the council got from Emergency Manager Todd to the Finance Commission at some point, because the council had the benefit of hearing a robust presentation from our emergency manager that basically outlined 3 different scenarios of investments in wildfire preparedness. It was very helpful and sort of ended with, and we can't do any of this right now. And so I think that might be helpful context for the Finance Commission.
So I just wanted to add on a little bit to Commissioner Fisher. He brought the thoughts to mind. One of the things I think would be useful to think about is oftentimes aging infrastructure costs a lot more maintenance. So if we hurry up and fix some major piece of infrastructure, what is the return back in savings for maintenance, basically? I think that should be part of our equation.
Great. I'll go to the public. I just have one speaker card from Gus Hu.
I don't know if you remember me. I was came before you the things for the 3 sporting events, Super Bowl, March Madness, which is now. So hey, March Madness and the World Cup. But I was married to an accountant, so and she was she was super smart. I'd like to point out that there's only 6 people here from the public. I think there'll be a lot more. Most people don't want new taxes. You're to fight. Well, I'll be one of your bigger persons that you're to fight against for no new taxes, representing the public. Again, this is a lot of money that the amount of money, 285 to 307 we're talking about, and it's just a rush job. The Brown Act, I have filed class actions in federal court, not in state court, and this is something that is I would say under color of law, because it's not being publicized. Also, I'd like to point out you're talking about wildfires, the operation. I already pointed this out to town council, but 14 cents out of property taxes go to the county for the fire, and that's what other cities and states are doing. You don't have to have a fire guy, because a bunch of people here are in the newspaper doing the fire stuff. You get on front page news is in this Chris, it's $1 million for 3 years, and it's 3 million. You saved $3 million right there. One of the things that I want to bring up is soccer. It shows a $2.5 million to do a replacement on the AstroTurf, and that's, if you look it up online, it's $1 million. So a lot of the, again, accounting, you can save this $5 million just by looking at what they're saying they're charging. $2.5 million to replace a soccer field is insane. Another thing was like the drainage on the streets and roads, $172 million. You can find more than that, because I pointed out Loma Street drain, and that's $1 million to fix something that was a plugged up sewer drain 3 years ago, and 3 people spoke on it, and it doesn't need it. I used to live in that area. I have more to say, but I only have 3 seconds or 5 seconds. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you. And we'll go to Jack Veneta and then Heidi Owens.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, and Finance Commission. Thank you for the time. It's been a while since I've been here, so my request is that we put in the same amount of effort into looking at cost cutting or efficiencies of the costs and the expenditures that we have. And because it's been a long time, my next statement is maybe out of date, but the last I remembered, we bought a very expensive add-on to our accounting program. The last I knew, it was about a year behind schedule. I don't know how that is progressing, but I do know that it wasn't producing the reports that we needed. So again, just to repeat, I'd like to see an equal amount of effort put into studying our costs rather than just revenues. Thank you.
Thank you. Heidi Owens.
I don't think I'm allowed to ask questions, so maybe I can relay them through you, Mayor Moore. As a fellow renter, I'm concerned that any new parcel tax could make my rent go up higher. I think that's not allowed. So I was hoping to get some comments from someone, from the consultants, to assure that renters won't have their rents increased because of higher parcel taxes. But similarly, I'm concerned about small businesses having the taxes passed on to their tenants, or small businesses as tenants getting the triple net lease expense passed on to them. And I think our small businesses already struggle mightily to operate in the town. So I was just curious about information about those two things, the unintended consequences of taxes. And I do appreciate Commissioner Reiner's comments about slow rolling. I think these are really big decisions, and I do agree with some of the public comment here that nobody really knew about this meeting. It's every 2 years we can do this. So I think this is the type of issue that should be really, given proper time, public comment, public notice, input from the community. I just heard about it because I went to Democracy 10 today, and I subscribe to every single alert. So that's it. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you. Do we have any comments on Zoom?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
Great, thank you. Then that concludes public comment, and we will go back to the Council and Finance Commission. Yes, Councilmember Hudis.
Thank you. I wonder if someone could comment on how this might impact renters.
I don't have that information tonight, but I could get back to the Council and the Finance Commission with that information.
Okay, is information on the tables that were presented and how that relates to rentals? No.
If I could, Wincy, can you hear me?
Please, go ahead.
Yeah, so generally, that's going to be largely governed by the terms of a renter's lease with their landlord. There's nothing in law that prevents adjustments being made by a landlord based upon an increase to their costs of owning the land. That would be dictated by when and how much they're able to do that based upon the rental lease or the rental terms or the lease terms.
Thank you. Do we have other comments from finance commissioners about sort of the weighting question that Councilmember Rennie asked? It's okay if not. Or anything else. Oh yeah, Vice Mayor Risto and then Commissioner Reiner.
Thank you. I mean, I think we are not in a position right now to know if we want to go forward this fall, and I think that would be pretty big lift. But that said, given that staff and, there's work being done right now to look at the legislative fix, I think that is important to keep in mind. And even if we don't need it this fall and we need it in 2 years, I think time is of the essence. We want to make sure that work continues. We have a lot of options in front of us. I don't know where we'll end up. I don't feel a sense of urgency, but I do appreciate the opportunity to think about this for whether we want to pursue it in the fall if that were something that suddenly became very clear. And it's hard to say what can happen in a few months. When we get information back from the consultant, when the Finance Commission sees the information on wildfire preparation, one of the things I think about is this last year, a deficit did not materialize, but we had no control over that. That was not based on anything we knew. It was a surprise increase in sales tax and an unanticipated vacancy rate that did not necessarily serve us well, but it did save money. And so there's so much uncertainty on certain things that we can't control that each year, what we do know is that we are not going to operate in the black unless something else changes. So I would be hesitant to just say, okay, forget about this, let's talk about it in 2 years. I think it doesn't hurt to keep the process going and have continued conversation about what our options might be, and especially to get that legislative fix put in, created so that we have the opportunity for a sales tax if and when we want to pursue it. Looks like the town manager actually wants to either correct me or add something.
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to answer the question about the renters. The Tenant Protection Act of 2019 places a cap on certain types of properties. Generally, apartment type rentals greater than 15 years could be capped at 5% plus the local inflation, or 10%, whichever is lower. And certain jurisdictions have other requirements that can actually impact that cap. However, to Jim's point, nothing stops rent increase from being passed on to a tenant through a lease or through a vacancy when a new tenant is brought into the apartment. Overall, I just want to make really clear, part of the reason why staff has brought this forward has been years where we're projecting future deficits. It's incumbent upon us to have the conversations that we're having today. Whether or not we proceed is a choice of the council. We're not going to push the council into that. Years of prudent finances have given us some cushion. So did the $7.2 million that we received under the ARPA funding, as well as the significant sales tax that was generated by a local business that went away, for which we placed half of that sales tax into our capital fund, and we've been living off that capital fund with minimal contributions to continue it. Our situation today, and we'll see this when NHA's reports come out, which will show the projections being better than what we've seen in our 5-year forecast, is that the operating cost increases exceed the revenues. It is assured that we will cross and be unable to continue it, whether it's the cost of people with a heavy leaning towards the pension costs associated with it, or just the general operating environment. On the capital side, we are not contributing enough to the basic deferred maintenance, and we are not contributing enough to the large-scale capital, especially when you consider any of the rehabilitation that may be necessary, which includes this facility, as well as what one of the public members spoke to, a soccer field that has a 7-figure improvement, as well as $29 million of stormwater and a whole litany of lists that we provided to. On top of that, we also cannot contribute to new activities that are important. Wildfire prevention, our last report we presented in December of last year showed approximately $40 to $42 million in need over the course of the next 10 years. And so when you add all that together, the big question that occurs is, what do we want to look like in the future? What do we want to provide? And how are we going to pay for it? And you can have a choice not to contribute more, but then the decisions have to be, then what do we cut and reduce and do less of and divest ourselves of to be able to bring our cost framework in line with the revenue. And so irrespective of the decision, it's very important that you're doing your due diligence, that we're having the conversations, and that these conversations continue with public input and input on the priorities of the town. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Please.
I couldn't agree more. I think what I'm urging is let's do the work and let's get our understanding of what our future looks like comprehensively integrated and completed and communicated so that we will have a plan moving forward. And I think that's exactly what you're saying, Chris. So I'm fully on board. I thought it might be helpful, though. I'm older, so I forget dates. The next several steps, we've got budget meetings coming up. We've got consultant reports coming in, which I think are going to kick off a whole bunch more questions that will need to get answered. You're not going to get a finished product coming out of the gate there. We're going to have scenarios. We're going to want to talk about what we do, what our priorities along those are. So maybe for the benefit of maybe myself and even the public, the things that are coming up in the next 2 months or so that will provide information that will help us formulate that plan.
As I mentioned earlier, we'll be back at Finance Commission with the reports from NHA on the 14th, to Town Council on the 21st with the input from Finance Commission. The budget will print on November 20th, and at that point will be the operating and the capital budget. I'm sorry, did I say April 20th? Sorry, thank you. April 20th, and then subsequent to that, we'll have meetings in late April and early May with the Finance Commission, and then with the Town Council subsequent to that.
Great, thank you. We'll go to Commissioner Rogers, and then Chair Monk, and then Councilmember Bradame, Councilmember Hudis.
Let me turn that on. Couple of, I'm trying to absorb all the information that we received in, 3 days ago? And you look at the amount of data that's presented. but I also look at the accuracy of forecast and what we're actually doing. I mean, here we're looking at fiscal 25 and fiscal 2026. We had a positive number of 4.3 million, and yet we dropped down the next year to a loss of 3.1 million, and then for the next 5 years. I've got to have some confidence in the reporting. How could you be that far off year to year? And I ask again, is this different methods of reporting? Are we doing it government accounting? Is it doing it with generally accepted accounting principles, or is it a modified, that's some hybrid of both? Cash basis versus accrual. And so I'm looking and trying to figure out, I have no confidence, and if there were online betting, I've got a bet I want to make, the accuracy of 5 years forecast. And what did we forecast for last year versus what it actually turned out? And let's get current reporting where it's more reasonably accurate. This is too much of a gap. I mean, it combined is 7.4 million swing in terms of the results. How do you make decisions about what projects you're going to fund when you've got that kind of disparity? So that's one thing. Another is that I want to go back to is we've got a lot of question about reasonable housing for what's average median income, and I did take the effort to look on the internet, and there's a very large building that's similar to some of those that are being proposed that's on Coleman Avenue. I encourage everybody to take a look at what that looks like, and I wanted to know what was the price of a 1-bedroom versus and a 2-bedroom monthly rental on that. And the 1-bedroom was $3,400. Now, is that affordable? How in the world can you get to affordable housing when it's going to be that expensive? A 2-bedroom was, a studio was $2,800. A 2-bedroom was $3,900. I mean, where's the affordability of this, and what is the target of what we think is the affordable housing that we're trying to provide people in Los Gatos? And that applies to the North 40. What are we talking about rents for that one? So this is, and the building is called Alba, ALBA. It's on Coleman Avenue. You could look it up on Google just for confirmation, but it's right adjacent to the airport. I mean, that can't be that desirable of a place with all the noise. So my 2 cents, I think we're not prepared to make a decision based on these forecasts. I think there's more work that needs to be done, and I would suggest that we move out the timing of we spend more time looking at what is and what we could vote on, talk about something in 3 or 4 weeks out after we have an opportunity really to, we've only had 4 days to look at 135 pages of reports, hardly a lot of time to do study and research. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Monk.
Thank you. I thought I would just make a comment as the chair of the Finance Commission. I'm into my 3rd month of my 3rd year, and I'm excited to say that next month's commission meeting will finally get 3 studies presented that go to the core, I think, of what the verbal commentary raised, which was how do we get a handle on the assets and liabilities of the town? The 3 studies we're going to be receiving from NHA are our fiscal condition analysis, a 5-year and long-term forecast, and a fiscal impact analysis. We've been asking for an asset liability matching since the moment I've been on this commission, and I think we're about to get it, which will really put us in a strong position to understand what is the revenue base and what is the liability base of the city. To give staff credit, staff has urged that we be patient as a finance commission. That is the recurring theme coming from the town manager, and we have been patient, except in making a motion to start to pay down our unfunded liabilities twice in the last 12 months. The last motion was passed unanimously last week to begin to make additional discretionary payments on what is basically a liability that is not going to get smaller. Outside of that, our hope is that starting next month, we can start to make more recommendations to cut cost as much as potentially raise revenue or optimize revenue. So I thought I'd just give that context that my tenure sort of lines up with next month's meeting, and then we'll have a lot of information to make plans and make recommendations to the council.
Thank you. Councilmember Badami?
Thank you. So I appreciate the financial wisdom of our finance commissions. You guys are invaluable to us. That being said, is it worthy of keeping the process moving for potential revenue options for this election cycle? I'm kind of hearing no, especially from Chair Monk just now. Let's wait till we get these studies maybe next month. I mean, there's a time and expense that's involved in exploring potential revenue options in such a short time span. So unless I hear otherwise, I'd like to hear it from a finance commissioner.
We have been urged patience by staff, and we have listened. And so as it relates to whether or not we need to move towards a ballot item, that's a political decision. We're trying to get to the bottom of the town's finances for your benefit. That's the way I see it.
Thank you. And I think I heard that let's not rush things so that we can make a wise decision as politicians and financial stewards of the town.
Councilmember Hudes?
Yeah, I think, we were presented with some options on doing a sales tax in, I think it was 2024. And, at that time, I felt that we had 2 main issues with moving that forward. Number 1 was the accuracy of our 5-year forecast. I don't think we've fixed that at this point, but we're hopeful that we will. The other was how much revenue would actually be generated through that sales tax measure, and that was without the legislative fix. And if I recall, that was about $1 million a year that was projected through that. Now, since that time, the county has passed an additional sales tax of 0.5%. And I did want to reflect on that a little bit, that I think one of the keys for that passing was that there was emphasis not only on how much revenue that tax would raise, but also on a 3-pronged approach where the county would identify savings that could be had. And so to come back to Mr. Van Naden's comments, I think that if we are going to move something forward with a revenue measure, we have to put efforts into understanding how, from a quantitative perspective, we can actually be more efficient with the money that we have. There are all kinds of options and technologies and AI and other things, and as well as really the motivation of our own terrific employees to come forward with ideas about how to be more effective, operationally effective as well. So I think that needs to be part of any comprehensive view on fixing the financial issues we have. And so I would also like to see, effort put into that side as well.
The town manager.
No, I really appreciate all the comments of the council. There's a couple of things that are happening at the same time. We're experiencing and having to talk and make decisions about the financial future at the same time when we're looking at the data and how dated some of the data is from our current systems to be able to utilize that for decision making. Fortunately, the town has implemented its new ERP system. It was a little over $1 million. There are still modules to be implemented. And we still are improving upon our chart of accounts, which would allow us to get to those monthly monitoring statements for the budget, which is something that we've committed to do. Also looking at tracking our capital projects and ensuring that we're following where are we in those projects and how much we're spending. It sounds from the discussions that in April, we will be getting the preliminary information on the assumptions related to those NHA reports, the 3 studies on both the housing element implementation and our financial outlook and 10-year forecast. And I think with those, you'll see the numbers that NHA is projecting for us that look a little bit better. Our reserves are healthy, so a decision today is not necessarily something that is required. We can continue the conversation is what I'm hearing from the council and the commission and circle back after those studies to be able to determine what course of action we want to take going forward. I know the council is going to be meeting here at 7 o'clock to give us some formal direction, which I imagine it will be a relatively shorter meeting. But I will say the commission has done a wonderful job asking the right questions. They've identified the areas of weakness that we've needed to address to be able to demonstrate the numbers on a more timely basis. The council has been very diligent and thoughtful in how we proceed in trying to protect the services of the town. And on the revenue side, we're already moving forward with some significant initiatives that could lead to potentially additional revenue. On the expenditure side, our new administrative services director has implemented a process that we've been re-looking at the expenditures, the actual expenditures of the last 3 years, and resetting department budgets to what is more realistic and adjusting those to where an appropriate base should be, and then having departments justify the addition above that, so that should help. And we've been very cautious as it comes to our capital budgets, knowing that we're dwindling that funding and have pulled back on funding to ensure that we have the capacity and funding to perform, but also make decisions that can benefit what's critical for us in today. So I think we're well positioned, and the council and the commission does not have to feel that we have to hurry without doing proper discussion and research.
Thank you. Yes, to the town attorney.
I wanted to circle back on the question of regular meeting versus special meeting, and I don't have the answer to that question just yet, but I can follow up. But I will say I think it's mooted because Councilmember Rennie is correct. Per the town code, the regular meetings are set by the code for every month, and it just happens that the council has canceled its July meetings in the past. And so there would be 2 regular meeting dates in the month of July.
Thank you. Okay. No other questions for our experts while they're here? Great. Well, thank you very much for the thorough presentation. Very helpful. And without any other comments, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.